If you've ever found yourself moving your to-do list tasks from one week to the next, maybe 1 month to the next, maybe even 1 year to the next, and you can't quite figure out why you're procrastinating so much on it, and you've tended to call yourself lazy as a result, then this video is for you, because I'm going to help you get to the bottom of what's really holding you back and how it's absolutely not laziness and it's not that you're incapable. It is self-doubt in action. And I'm going to give you some tools for figuring out what that is, what's the root cause of it, so that you can move forward and do the thing that you've been wanting to do. We're very quick to label ourselves as perfectionists, procrastinators, overthinkers, and this can feel comforting in a way to label ourselves in that way and to carry that identity, because it's a bit of a dead end, right? There's not much that we can do. If that's just the way that we are, then it's the way that we are. And so a different way to look at that is to think about what is actually at the root of that behavior that you're doing, because it isn't an identity. It isn't who you are. It's something that you're doing. And that's a really important distinction that I'm going to talk about a lot on this channel, talking about self-belief coaching. What I help my clients to understand is what's really at the root of the behaviors that they're engaging in. So whether that is procrastination, perfectionism, people pleasing, overthinking, overworking, and we look at what really is behind that. What is the risk or the fear that is driving that behavior, so that we can address that and then therefore move forward with a lot less resistance, a lot less overwhelm, and just more clarity and ease. So that's what I'm going to help you do today. I'm going to be using myself I'm going to be using myself as an example because, as you might have seen in my last video, I'm making 25 videos in 2025 as a bit of a challenge to myself to develop my self-trust, and lots of other reasons. You can hear about that in the video. But it took me a long time to get here. I've had this on my list for a long time, posting on YouTube, and I hadn't got around to it for many years. I set up this channel around 4 years ago, and it's only in 2025 that I've really started to take it seriously and to post longer form videos. So I'm going to talk you through what it was that was really holding me back, what was truly getting in my way, which when I discovered that and I addressed it, I was able to take the step forward of actually posting. And this is my 4th video of 2025, which is more than I've made in the whole time I've had this channel. So it's working. And I'm going to talk you through that process, and I'm going to share an analogy that's really helpful for understanding how self-doubt operates more generally, which you can apply to any area of your business or life. So definitely have a notebook ready, because you could work through it as you listen to me describe it and make a couple of lists in your notebook that's going to help you understand what's really holding you back. So let's talk about that analogy. This is something I learned from the person who I trained with as a self-belief coach, who's called Sas Petherick, and she talks about the experience of having one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. It can be quite frustrating when you're not doing something that you say you want to do and you feel like, I don't know why. What is it that's holding me back? This helps bring some relief to that experience, because you understand actually there really is something behind that. It's just that it's currently subconscious, it's under the radar, and you're not aware of it. So this exercise is how you can bring it into the light and then do something with it. So if you put your foot on the accelerator and the brake in a car at the same time, you're not going to get very far. You're also going to make a lot of loud noise and smelly smoke and cause damage to the engine probably. But what's happening when you're experiencing self-doubt is that the thing that's pushing down on the accelerator is things like your motivations, desires, drive, your values. There's usually something values related in what it is that you're choosing to do. If you have a goal or an intention, it's not likely that it's appeared out of thin air. It will have come from you, and it's going to be meaningful to you. And that's pushing you forward, and it's making you write the task on your to-do list week after week. So what you might not be aware of is at the same time as having all of that drive and all that motivation pushing on the accelerator, there's also a whole host of things pushing on the brake, which is why you're feeling that frustrated, I can't move forward feeling, and you can't quite put your finger on what the reason is. So what is on the brake is risk, basically. We as humans protect ourselves from psychological risk, and there are some main risks that I will talk about in future videos, and comment below if you'd like me to make a video specifically about that. But essentially we're protecting ourselves from things that we don't want to experience, emotional experiences, things like rejection or failure or judgment. Perhaps even just me saying those words right now triggered something in you that made you think, actually, yeah, that's my thing. Like, judgment is what I'm afraid of. So it may be that you do have some awareness of what it is that you're avoiding, but usually we're not quite aware of that in the moment that we're experiencing it. What happens as a result of that is that we engage in behaviours that protect us from experiencing that thing. So to use myself as an example again, I had been saying for a long time I wanted to stop relying so heavily on Instagram and start posting longer form content on longer lasting platforms like my blog on my website and on YouTube. And yet, alongside saying that, I was making reels constantly and showing up on Instagram before any other platform. And it wasn't matching up. What I was saying and what I was doing were not matched up. And that is because there were some fears with their foot on the brake. And so when I started to really get curious about this and to investigate what is it exactly that I'm afraid will happen if I actually start doing what I say I'm going to do, which is post on YouTube. A lot of it came down to the permanency of YouTube videos. Ironically, that's also one of my motivations, right? So the thing that I want to gain from being on here is that my content will have a longer lifespan because they can be found in Google search and they just will be easier to discover and for people to look at for years down the line, which is not really true on Instagram. And yet within that, there is also a fear that, oh God, people will be able to find these videos for years down the line. People will be able to find them on Google. And so the very thing that was motivating me, I was also afraid of because it just feels a bit more permanent. Okay, if I'm going to post a video that's long form that can be found on Google, that requires me to really know what I'm talking about, really be an expert. Who am I to do that? I really need to make sure that I know everything there is to know about self-doubt before I can do that. That's the extreme version of that story and that belief. Perhaps that feels familiar as I say that. Maybe there's something that you've been working on where you're waiting to know more, waiting to feel more of an expert before you can do it. So that was definitely one of my fears. And the other fear that I uncovered was my friends and family, or basically anyone who isn't my ideal client that I'd love to work with as a coach, finding my content and kind of having questions about it. I'm not expecting them to judge me or to be negative about it. Even receiving kind of positive comments or compliments about my content that I put on here brings me out in a bit of a cold sweat. Like I just don't love the idea of having to talk about it in the context of my normal life, outside of my work, outside of my kind of online presence. And this is where we get to be curious and notice, what do these fears have in common and what might be at the root of those? And so for me, what I noticed they both have in common is this idea of having to justify or explain myself. For example, if someone does find my video 5 years from now and there's something in there that I've said that I don't stand by, or that maybe I haven't explained well, and I receive a comment from someone who corrects me on that or asks me to expand on it, I imagine that that would give me the same feeling as having to explain to friends or family at the family get together why I'm on YouTube or something like that. And I think it's to do with having to explain or justify myself, even though those people would all be coming from a really good place. Again, that's really important to be specific, because a lot of people will generalize and they'll say, I don't want to put my face on Instagram stories, or I don't want to start a podcast or a YouTube channel because I'm afraid of being judged. And actually that's super generic. That's not very helpful because it's just too big to tackle. So what's really good to do is to be more specific and really drill down into who exactly is it that you're imagining would judge you. And it may not be judgment. It may be like I described, I'm not worried that my friends and family will judge me, but I'm just worried that they won't get it, or that they'll have questions, or that they'll start a conversation that I don't know how to handle. And so that's a lot more easy to work with than just a generic, I've got fear of judgment. And that brings me to, why do this experiment then? If I've uncovered these fears that I'm afraid of saying something that I can't back up and it being found on the internet 5 years down the line, and what if I have to explain myself to friends and family and it feels a bit awkward? The whole point of doing this experiment is to prove to myself that I absolutely can handle the discomfort of those things potentially happening. And essentially how I can sum those things up is not being able to control how what I put out is received. And that's always true, right? None of us can ever control how anything that we do is perceived or received, whether that's in person having a real life conversation with someone, or whether it's on social media in a fleeting reel that you post that disappears after a while, or if it's in a more long lasting YouTube video that can be found for years to come. We can never control that stuff. But what I'm going to learn through this experiment is that I can handle the discomfort of not having control over how people respond or react to what I put out. And that's not my responsibility either. All I can do is show up and share the stuff that I feel is important, that's meaningful to me, that I hope is helpful to you. And if it doesn't land in that way, that's not on me to worry about. And actually, what I've learned just through doing these 4 videos that I filmed in January 2025 is that every new video is an opportunity to address something that I feel I missed in the last one. And that's not about getting into perfectionism, but in a way it's an endless supply of video ideas, because every time I post something, I will think of a new way that I could have explained that, or a different example I could have shared. And I always will have the opportunity to use those in future videos. So what a brilliant thing. Something that I was afraid of and that was a fear and a risk for me, that I would run out of ideas, or I wouldn't know what to say, or I wouldn't explain things well, is actually an opportunity, because every new video that I make is a chance to explain something differently, share a different example, share from a different perspective. And so, yeah, sometimes the thing we're afraid of actually becomes an opportunity in itself. So I'm just going to do a little quick overview again of the kind of accelerator break analogy so that you can use it for yourselves. What I'd advise you do is take a piece of paper and put 2 columns. So on the left, you're going to have accelerator. On the right, you're going to have break. And on the side of the accelerator, you're going to write down all the reasons that you want to do the thing that you say you're going to do. So why do you care about it? Why is it important to you? Why now? What does it mean to you? What values does it help you live in alignment with? And just keep going until you've got quite a few examples on that side. And then on the right, under the break title, you're going to list anything that you're afraid might happen if you do the thing. So if you do stop procrastinating, if you do stop overthinking, if you stop getting caught up in perfectionism and you just do it and you go for it, what might happen? And they could be positive, negative, or neutral. So don't feel that it can only be bad things that could happen. Like I might get a horrible comment if I post a video. It could be I get loads of views if I post a video, which you might think is a reason to want to do it, right? You want to reach people and to share your message. But that could also be something that brings up a little bit of fear for you, because what does more visibility mean? Put that down on the list too. So write down anything that you are afraid might happen if you do the thing. And then underneath both of those columns, I want you to write my behaviors. And so this is where you're going to list out what are the things that you're doing instead of what's on the left. And we know now, having gone through this example together, that those behaviors are driven by what's on the right, so the break column. So for me, the example I shared earlier was I was posting on Reels, even though I said whenever I film a video, it's going to go on YouTube. We can often do productive procrastination where we're doing something else that's still useful. Like for me, posting on Reels is still useful because it's somewhere that I can connect with potential clients, and it's a big part of my marketing ecosystem as a business owner. So that's not totally wasted time, but it's not getting me closer to the thing that I said I wanted to do, which is to establish myself on YouTube. And then there's another kind of category of things where we're being more passive. And so for me, that would be like binging Netflix shows, scrolling for hours on Vinted, numbing myself to the kind of guilt that I was carrying around not going ahead with the goal that I'd set. So yeah, you're going to have your accelerator, your break, and your behaviors that you're engaging in. And I want you to make sure that you are not judging yourself as you write these things down. Try to zoom out and come at it with a sort of reporter's mindset. You're just looking at the facts very neutrally, very objectively, and you're being curious about why that might be the case. So it's not about self-blaming or shaming at all. It's very much curiosity, non-judgment, and just seeing what you discover. I really hope you found that helpful. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have been through this exercise. Obviously, you don't have to share with me what you discovered, but let me know if it was useful and if it's freed up a little bit of that friction and frustration where you can't quite figure out what it is that's holding you back, because hopefully this will bring a lot of clarity and bring to light some of the things that may really be at the root of why you're procrastinating. I'd love to hear your questions and comments, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you so much for watching.